The world of running sports has lots of puzzles that even smart people can't figure out. One thing that has confused fans and experts is the women's 100-meter race. This race has seen many female runners try to compete, but something crazy happened. On July 16, 1988, this was the day for the women's 100-meter practice races during the United States Olympic tryouts for track and field in Indianapolis. But what happened on the track that day has not only been remembered, but has been called the biggest mystery in the world of running sports. American Florence Griffith-Joyner, who people called Flo-Jo, just did something nobody thought was possible. She set the women's 100-meter world record with a time of 10.49 seconds during the practice rounds of the race. This was an amazing record, and still today, no female runner has gotten close to Flo-Jo's record. The 10.49-second time is still sitting at the top all by itself, enjoying the fresh air with no worry about other runners beating it. What really happened that day? How did Flo-Jo get such an unbelievable record in women's 100 meters? Make sure to watch this video until the end to find out. And if you're new here, make sure to follow this channel and hit the bell button to never miss an update. So let's start with a video right now. To say that Flo-Jo's record was great might not be strong enough words, because this record of 10.49 seconds in the women's 100 meters is something that's out of this world. This had never been seen before and still hasn't been seen again today. It was an incredible jump up from the old record of 10.76 seconds, set in Zurich by Evelyn Ashford in August 1984, who was the first female runner to break the 11-second wall. And so amazing was Flo-Jo's record that it started fights and arguments in the world of running sports. But how did it all start? Did Flo-Jo hit this magic number by luck, or was it pure hard work and training? To understand that, we have to go back in time and look at how Flo-Jo got better before this memorable race. Now, looking at Flo-Jo's old performances before the July 1988 race shows that she was working hard to make her times better each year. Flo-Jo was getting better at her personal best times and making sure she was ahead of every other female runner. In 1983, Flo-Jo's best time in the women's 100 meters was only 11.06 seconds. Then in 1984, Flo-Jo was determined to do something great, and great she did. She broke the 11-second wall to hit a personal best of 10.99 seconds. But in 1985, she went backwards and hit a season best of 11 seconds. In 1987, she got better and recorded 10.96 seconds. And then came the magical time of 10.49 seconds in 1988. This was a strong breakthrough for Flo-Jo. She seemed to have worked so hard to jump all the way from her previous season's best of 10.96 seconds to 10.49 seconds. But the mystery behind this magical 10.49 seconds is that today, about 34 years later, this record still stands as the all-time women's fastest time in women's running history. All of the world's greatest female runners have tried and failed to beat this magical number. It's no wonder all sorts of questions have been asked about this record. It is the record that still causes lots of arguments in the women's running. World up first, there's a question about wind reading on that important day. Well, for those of you who don't know, all running races are checked for wind effects and fixed carefully to make sure it's fair. This is because the wind has a big effect on how fast runners can go on the track. It's no wonder that the group in charge of track and field made a rule at the 1936 meeting to make the legal limit 2 meters per second. This means that any race measuring more than 2 meters per second wind will not count for world record consideration until it's fixed for legal wind. And this rule still works today. Now looking at the July 16th, 1988 race, the wind reading during the race was 0 meters per second. But some people say that the wind reading was wrong and that Flo-Jo's 10.49 seconds was helped a lot by wind, which pushed the number to a level that couldn't be reached normally. This argument is backed up by the video that was recorded on that important day that moved away from the runners towards the big screen showing the results. And as you can see, two flags next to the top of the screen are waving hard, which makes people ask lots of questions. But then again, that may not be a smart way of saying the wind reading in the stadium that day was wrong, because maybe the wind reading at the top of the stadium, which is where the flags are, might have been high compared to the wind reading on the track. This is because the stadium has a roof, so you wouldn't expect the wind speed at the top of the stadium to be the same as at the bottom inside the stadium. But besides that, there's another important video that was recorded by Omega just before. The gun went off at the women's practice races on that important day. As you see in the moments before the start of the race, someone is holding a white piece of cloth that is blowing really hard. And even though it's not blowing directly at the runners, it seems to be hitting them from the side or at a diagonal angle. This means the wind might have helped them to some degree during the race. Indeed, this white piece of cloth blowing really hard is another piece of proof that the wind might have been blowing above 0 meters per second. So we can't ignore the fact that at some point in the race, the wind was blowing in favor of the runners. Still on the topic of wind, when you look at the races that happened on that same day, moments before the first and second practice races of the women's 100 meters, you realize that the races took place in a strong positive tailwind reading that goes over the legal consideration. Again, the third practice race also recorded a strong positive tailwind. So what happened that in just a few minutes, the wind just died completely during the first and second practice races of the women's 100 meters and then came back again during the third practice race? What caused that huge change? Well, all these weird things are what have made people suspicious about whether the wind reading during that particular race was real. There is also the problem of mistakes in the wind measuring equipment. Well, we all know that in 1988, the equipment used might not have been as good as what we have today. Similarly, there was a question about where the equipment was placed, which some say was in the wrong spot. But among all these suspicious things is the problem of drug accusations, which takes the biggest part of the arguments surrounding Flo-Jo's 10.49-second record dot, of course. In the history of running sports, the problem of drugs has always existed, with some runners getting kicked out right at the final moments of big events. So when people started to say Flo-Jo might have been on steroids before that race, I wasn't surprised at all. Of course, we may never prove all these arguments for sure because the evidence has fallen apart in the last 3 decades. But looking at Flo-Jo's physical appearance in the year of the race, you start to see a big change compared to how her body looked in previous years' dot, as mentioned before. Flo-Jo's personal best before the magical race was pretty amazing, sitting at 10.96 seconds over the 100 meters. Of course, this time was just impressive in the 80s, but comparing that to her world record of 10.49 seconds, you realize it was a massive jump from her previous performance. And to put it into perspective, it was a whopping 4.3% jump, which, if you ask me, is rare. And that's, of course, what brings us to the question of how Flo-Jo might have been on steroids before this important race. Well, Daryl Robinson, who once competed with Flo-Jo in college a few years earlier, made the DRUG accusation. She claimed that Flo-Jo literally bought human growth hormones from her for $2,000. She even added that Flo-Jo used and gave out these banned substances in front of them. Now, it might be difficult to prove these accusations, but one thing remains: the 10.49 seconds is the current world record, and it still stands strong dot. So there you have it, guys. The magical 10.49 seconds world record by Flo-Jo. And as you can tell, it may take many years to come to break this record. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more amazing content like this. Thanks for watching,